Good afternoon, everyone. I believe it's afternoon for, well, practically all of us. My name is Stjepan Gabrić. I'm Senior Water Supply and Sanitation Specialist in the World Bank, essentially covering the World Bank water supply and sanitation operations in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and Southeast Europe. And today we'll be moderating and chairing two sessions of our workshop, which we slightly provocatively called Beyond Utility Reach, essentially focusing on rural wastewater management. I mean, the whole idea came from the group of people who are working on Danube Water Program in association with ICPDR, discussing the topics that are somehow neglected in the wastewater management. And one of these field or subfield which is neglected is actually rural wastewater management, because most of discussion and almost all of the investment actually go into urban wastewater management. This is where the money is, this is where the big wastewater treatment plants are. So this rural aspect was definitely neglected, and we thought it's worth putting some effort in opening this topic, inviting people, discussing status, and exchanging experience. So this is kind of a second day of our knowledge development workshop. I will be chairing two sessions following yesterday's session that were pretty much focused on a regulatory legal framework and position on behalf of from the point of European Commission. Today we'll be looking at two different aspects. First aspect is basically organization of service provision when we speak about rural wastewater management, experience from different parts of the region and different parts of Europe. And in second session, we will be basically looking more at the technical technology level. What are the, I wouldn't say optimal, but sometimes neglected, but definitely very interesting and promising technologies that we believe should be further advanced through promoted through events like this one. But let me start with my first session. So the title of the session is Good Practice at the Municipal Level. We will be, as I said, looking at different forms of organization of the service provision and rural wastewater management in three somehow similar but still distinctive countries on the region. So we have with us Mr. Marjanović from Belgrade, Serbia, Mr. Ike Zeidler from Linz, Austria, and Mr. Broco from Lisbon, Portugal, who will be presenting experience from their own countries in how the rural wastewater management is organized and provided in individual countries. And be prepared. I basically asked them to be openly to discuss all the advantages and disadvantages, success and failures, and also to be critical if needed. So the whole idea is that we exchange the opinion, that we learn from each other. So basically, based on this experience and knowledge of your local circumstances, you can come to the conclusion which is basically optimal approach for your own case. So with that in mind, my pleasure is to introduce Mr. Prvoslav Marjanović, who is advisor to the director of Jaroslav Černý Institute in Belgrade. Mr. Marjanović, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stjepan. Good afternoon, everybody. I will start sharing my screen so that we can proceed. Okay, you can all see me, you can hear me well, I presume. As I said, I will speak in my personal capacity. I don't work for government, I don't work for EU or the bank, so I can speak my mind up and offer you my insights into the problem of wastewater management in Serbia and Danube River Basin in general, especially focusing on rural communities. I will try to speak quite quickly because we have only 15 minutes to present the material, so let me move on. I will start off by revisiting yesterday's presentations and giving you an introduction. Then I will talk a little bit about the state of decentralization and individual treatment facilities in Danube River Basin from the insight into the data that is available. I'll then focus on Serbia. And then I have two sessions, two parts of my presentations which are geared towards really steering or trying to provide a way forward. Yesterday, we heard that there are 22 million people approximately without flush toilet in Danube River Basin. I think that figure is slightly misleading. It's in the region. When you look at the basin itself, on the first graph, you see the water supply connection rates to public pipe water in the household. On average, it's about 80% in the Danube River Basin. So it's unrealistic that the 20% of 80 million people in the Danube Basin, that's 16 million, not 22, maximum possible without flush toilet. More realistic figure in the Danube River Basin is probably closer to 5 million without a flush toilet. In the region itself, when you count Ukraine and Moldavia, which are only parts of the country are in the Danube River Basin, the situation may be different. But in the Danube River Basin, the more realistic figure is close to 5 million. That brings me to the second graph, which basically shows the disparity between urban and rural connections and really tells us where the gaps are and in different countries with respect to rural population. And you see that in lower Danube countries, rural population is really lagging behind. Anyway, this is a map of agglomerations by size in the Danube River Basin, and you see obviously that the majority of those that we could consider in the rural sector are in the range of 2,000 to 5,000 people, even though some of them may be urbanized slightly in the center of the communities and so on, but a large number of settlements or agglomerations are could be classified as rural in character. When I look at the latest available data on the percentage of generated load in agglomerations bigger than 2,000 inhabitants, population equivalents in the basin, which are not collected as per Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, they don't have sewerage systems. You see a striking difference between lower Danube countries and upper Danube countries. More than 75% of these communities between 2,000 and 5,000 people are typically not connected to sewerage systems. Not to speak about agglomerations and settlements smaller than 2,000 people. If I look at the generated load in agglomerations, which are reported as individual and appropriate systems, and the percentage of the generated load connected to those, again, you see that there are some differences between especially Hungary and Slovakia. And I think it's probably the reason for these differences is in the way the individual systems are reported. I have a suspicion that some of the septic tanks are reported as IISs rather than as proper treatment individual systems. If I look at unconnected or uncollected and IISs, you see the boundary between, or the old Iron Curtain, if you want to use the analogy. And that's really the level of the development. And it's striking how big the problem is. So all these unconnected and EIS pluses can be considered as individual systems to a large extent. So the task to implement the directive, remember these are agglomerations bigger than 2,000, is enormous if we are going to connect all these people across the lower Danube. If I now look at agglomerations bigger than 2,000, and the percentage of EISs which are discharging to soil rather than the sewer system or the treatment plant by tracking the emptying of the systems to the appropriate treatment plant, you see again, there is a large proportion of those communities, especially in middle region, in Hungary, Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, Moldavia, parts of Romania, which are actually discharging into the soil. Now, soil as a recipient of treated or untreated wastewater is not recognized by the Water Framework Directive or the Urban Wastewater Directive, which I think is a major problem. That again is pushing us in the direction of having to connect all these people to centralize or to discharge into the wastewater, into the water streams rather than avoiding. If we do that, I think the impact on the environment are going to be much bigger on the status of water than they are currently. If I focus on Serbia, this is the distribution of settlements, not agglomerations, in the different size classes. And you see again that less than 2,000 is the majority, which we understand. 2,000 to 5,000 is a significant number. The rest is manageable easily by centralized system, 5 to 10,000, 10 to 50, and so on. In Serbia, we have delineated 398 agglomerations, taking care of some 745 settlements bigger than 2,000. Now, the major problem we have, as Konstantin mentioned yesterday, is depopulation. And if you look at the trend of the population in different class sizes, you see that the communities less than 5,000 people are all on a serious decline rate. The national population seems to be stabilizing or at the beginning of a declining trend in communities bigger than 5,000 people. So those are not, there is no question for those to go centralized systems, but for those from 5,000 down, I would be very reluctant to go and design collective systems which will not serve the people which are disappearing in those communities. When I look at what percentage of population in Serbia lives in different size classes, I see that the biggest chunk of people lives in the communities between 10 and 50,000. But I also see that the percentage of population living in communities smaller than 5,000 is closely 40% of the total population. So we're talking about some 3.5 million people. If I take the Serbia as an example and look at the percentage of people in different settlements, not in agglomerations of different sizes, which are served by individual sewerage systems, and I include in individual systems even septic tanks and pit latrines, we're fully aware that they are not adequate treatment. You see that 95% or more on individual systems covers by a large territory of Serbia and thousands of communities. Now, when I look at the character of those communities, I see that the communities between less than 2,000 are typically rural. There are approximately 600,000 individual systems serving those rural communities. Mixed systems, those are 2,000 to 5,000 people, approximately 205,000 individual systems in place, and 325,000 individual systems in place in urban and peri-urban settlements, those bigger than 5,000 people. Those in red should probably continue we should push them to connect to the centralized wastewater treatment system, unless you give some exceptions for the outskirts of the cities. The blue and the greens, I think, do not merit collection systems, centralized and central wastewater treatment plants in my mind. When I look at the current planning in Serbia, we are planning according to detailed implementation plan for the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive some 2.3 billion for construction of new sewers. That's assuming that everybody will be connected to the central system. 92% of investment in the network is for new sewer systems. If I look for wastewater treatment itself, I see that some 30% goes into medium-sized communities, the bigger proportion of the population. Some 30% goes to communities bigger than 10,000, but those 27% goes into communities between 2,000 and 10,000 people, of which, when you split it between the less than 5,000, you see about 12% of the investment going to the sector for wastewater treatment in the communities less than 5,000 people, assuming they all get connected to the sewer system. Now, for the sake of the argument, I'm going to assume that we're going to stop building any new sewer systems. And all those that are not connected currently will go into individual systems in communities smaller than 5,000. And if I look at the potential for savings, the red ones will definitely stay centralized. The 5 to 10,000 will also largely stay centralized. The others will go to individual systems under that assumptions. Giving us a figure of about 1 million individual systems to be installed and deal with the total population of Serbia, including those in settlements more than 2,000 people, not only in agglomerations. Also, for the sake of the argument, if I assume those figures, then it's possible to save around 2 billion euros on the construction of the new sewers and some 350 million euros for centralized wastewater treatment. These savings would allow us to consider subsidies for some 600,000 households to the level of approximately 4,000 euros per system to supplement the investment of the households in constructing proper individual and appropriate systems at individual households in those areas. Is it feasible? According to the data we have insight to, absolutely. Typical costs in Belgium do not exceed for activating sludge plant or an equivalent 1,000 euros per population equivalent. So for an average household of four people, you're talking about 4,000 euros to install on-site treatment facility and discharge the treated water to soil without discharging to sewers. Similar costs in the United States also are documented and well prescribed. If you look at the United States itself, and I would also urge people to consider the experience of Ireland, you see that the developed West Coast has many states with large proportion on individual systems. If it's feasible for them, I don't see why it's not feasible for the lower Danube Basin. And in closing remarks, I want to state that detailed analysis are obviously needed on all costs and benefits. There are many additional advantages which are possible and realistic by going individual systems in smaller communities and rural communities especially, such as flexibility, mobilization of additional funding from the individual houses because the subsidy program will not fund 100%. You can attract additional funds from the households to invest on their property. You can create a whole new industry for installing those, maintaining those, and so on, create jobs, and so on. You just have to develop proper management models to do that. Main problem is really not the technology, and I'm sure this will be addressed in the next session. The problem is really in the management of those systems, like Konstantin mentioned, that they don't have the capacity to manage these small systems. The problem of management is something to be considered very seriously, and different models for management are possible and can be considered. It's also important to identify all the role players and their responsibilities. Just to show you some other advantages, this is the diagram coming from Rocky Mountain Institute, published in 2004 on the role of decentralization systems, and I suggest everybody looks in that report because it documents details of advantages and disadvantages of decentralization. The investment and the stepwise investment in centralized system, creating a lot of spare capacity and investment in unneeded capacity, especially if your population is declining. Your lead time for designing and implementing larger systems is 5 to 10 years. Your lead time for implementing individual systems is 1 or 2 months if you have everything in place legally and so on. The different management models that have been used in different places are varied, and I just mentioned 5 here from the United States. These different management models have different role players, and each role player, from a regulatory authority, service provider, owner, user, all the way to responsible management agency, if you create such an agency in your country, and the role of each particular role player in different phases of the implementation of individual systems are clearly documented and can be implemented. I think the requisite for this is an enabling legal framework from the EU and national governments, which I believe is currently not the case, even though Ireland has gone a long way for providing this, and people are advised to look at the case study of Ireland, especially in light of the court case that they lost against the EU, and then implementing changes to their Water Services Act, and now it's possible. It's time to start thinking with an open mind and stop ignoring the potential of individual and appropriate systems because of difficult management issues that can be easily resolved. It's time to get soil recognized as a recipient of a treated wastewater primarily, and I think it's very pertinent and applicable to the Danube River Basin, especially the lower Danube for communities and agglomerations smaller than 5,000 equivalents. What the problem really is that our experience with on-site treatment in the past has been bad. Doesn't mean that the future has to be the same. Sewers are not really the sign of modern civilization. Sometimes we have to question those approaches seriously. And my suggestions to end the presentation is the Danube River Basin study to consider and develop appropriate management models and identify all the role players and their responsibility for effective implementation, especially for lower Danube is advisable with the project, maybe through ICPDR to explore this. I would love to be a part of this, even if it is at the cost of postponing my retirement. We need to lobby the EU to create an enabling legal framework and not to discredit individual and appropriate systems, as we heard yesterday might be the intention. And we have to recognize the real role of individual and appropriate systems and the role they can play in us all improving the quality of life in the rural sector and in some urban areas also. Thank you.
Thank you, Pravoslav. Thank you for this presentation. This is exactly what we want to achieve. I mean, we want to, be able to critically assess based on scientific evidence, current practice, look at the possible options, and come to recommendation to the benefits, I believe, of the end user. One explanation: the figure of 22 million refers to the population of all countries that are participating even partially in Danube River Basin. So not only the catchment area, but the whole country. That's the difference in numbers is coming back. But your actually presentation serves as a very good introduction to our next presentation. This is the experience how to organize service provision in a sizable number of the small communities acting with some kind of umbrella organization. So Upper Austria Water and Mr. Eichel Zeder, General Manager of Upper Austria Water. Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, Stepan, thank you very much for your introduction. I start my presentation. Just a moment, please. So, yes, I talk about a report about rural wastewater treatment provided by a cooperative in Upper Austria. And I made the presentation with the chair lady of the cooperative Dingdorf, Hermine Wessely. Okay. So Upper Austria, a state of the Republic of Austria, is in the northwestern part. And we have a hilly region, and in the south we have mountains with narrow valleys. The structure is that we have 440 communities, but we have more than 4,000 villages with less than 20 dwellings. So we are a scattered and small agglomeration. One of the solutions we support are water cooperatives. Water cooperatives are the user, owner, are the responsible persons, and they had the principles that are a public cooperations referred to the Austrian law. They are also controlled by the authority, by the local authority. They are self-determined and they have a personal responsibility from their organization. One of the principles is also cost covering. The organization is so that all members have to pay to the costs. Water cooperatives are like communities, are financed by connection fees, by basic charge and consumption charge for the operation. And they have also the possibilities to get subsidies from the state and from the Republic. They also have the possibility to get credits and loans. In Upper Austria now we have about 260 cooperatives in the regions, and I think in all regions we have it, but most in the hilly side of the northern part of Upper Austria. The member structure is that the small villages up to 10, up to 30 households are a topic to organize cooperatives in the for wastewater management. In Austria, we have more than 3,400 water cooperatives, but they are also dealing with water supply, irrigation, and flood control and melioration. For me, it's a solution predominant in the rural areas, in the small villages, where they can get an organization with inhabitants from the village. I show you an example, the water cooperative from Dingdorf, from the example from the founding to the planning, designing, constructing, and operating a small sewage and wastewater treatment plant. The foundation was 2006. The village had 23 households and 2 farmers. And in June 2009, they started with the construction of the plants, and 1 year later, it got commissioned by the local authority. In the middle, you'll see the chair lady, which have a lot of men to support. What was the motivation to organize a cooperative, a water cooperative, and to invest? There was an extreme drought, summer 2003, and some of the house wells from the village were dry, so the community has to supply them. And a solution with the nearest water cooperative for water supply was more than 2 kilometers away. So they made test drilling, and in the granite it was not easy, but they found it groundwater. So the water cooperative for water supply was the first step in solution. And then starts a discussion because some inhabitants were not sufficient to deal with sinks and septic tanks in the village. And this was the second step, that also they organize a wastewater treatment plant. I think to have a positive realization, it is very important to find an experienced consulting engineer. Not for urban solutions, you need one for rural solutions. And after the planning, they tendered the construction works. For the whole, the building costs about €1 million. 2/3 are investment to the wastewater part. 1/3 was investment to the water supply. The cooperative was financed by her own with connection fees. I think about 15%, 10-15% has been connection fees. Then they get subsidies from the Republic and from the state, about 20% for water supply and 40% for the wastewater cleaning, and the rest was financed by a credit. So the working cost per year annual is about 20,000 for wastewater and 15,000 for water. 2/3 from these costs are the payback from the credits. The system the data are about 2,000 meters PECU were installed, and the village is located on a hilly side, so it was easy that they get the viewers and they can provide it by gravitation. The plant is below the village, and so no pumping stations are necessary. The wastewater treatment plant was not a package plant, it was a reed bed filter system, first with a rotting station with straw, and then the wastewater come to the reed bed filters, and after an inspection shaft, the effluent disposal got to a small river, to a ditch. Here you see a photo from the controlling the distribution devices during the construction. And here you see effluent testing, and you see that the measured values are very deep they are not close to the threshold values. Also from the BOD5, you see it's below 10% from the limit value determined from the authority. It's interesting also in winter, if you have snow, if the plant is covered with snow, also the effluents are clearly below the determined values. A cooperative is belonging to their members, and though the community of the village cares to operate the wastewater plant. They have an annual list, and so the straw management for the rotting stations is provided by the members. They have also a field for to dispose the rotting, and now they are 10 years on operation, and there is enough place to dispose the straw. The water cooperative was consulted by the umbrella organization by Upper Austrian Water. This organization was founded 1946, long time ago. It was founded by a resolution of the Upper Austrian Parliament, and also the general manager and the office is financed from the Upper Austrian government. The main objectives are team working, speak with one voice, to pool ideas from the members, and to support interesting villages foundation, the water cooperatives, to help them to buy spare parts or equipment, to organize civil engineers, and also to hold training courses, also to represent their interests in the Austrian government administration. You see, the education program is courses for chairpersons, for cashiers, for water managers, and for attendants. Upper Austrian Water has group insurances for third-party insurance and accident insurance for the volunteers of the different cooperatives. Upper Austrian Water supports not only the wastewater cooperatives, also water cooperatives for supply or for amelioration and irrigation. Important and actual information they can get from a website. The members can get from information from a website. So also on, for example, on weekend or in the evening, they can get right information to work and organize their cooperative. Let me show one other successful solution. This is also in the northern part. There is a rural community with 8 villages, and the 8 villages built together for every village a solution to make wastewater cleaning plants. So the organization of Upper Austrian Water supports the cooperatives to be self-determined, to be cost-effective. So the solutions are local-based and independent. They have to do their own work. And when I see 1946 up to now, we have a long time experience to show that this sustainable model should also be fit for the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Maybe quick question before we move further. How unique is this form of association cooperative for Austria? I mean, does it only exist in Upper Austria, this kind of umbrella organization, or similar organization exist in other parts of Austria?
Cooperatives are in every part of Upper Austria, main in Upper Austria, Salzburg for water supply, but also for wastewater in Styria. And umbrella organizations are in Salzburg and also in Styria and the Burgenland. Nowadays there is discussion, and I'm consulting in Carinthia. And we have models in Ireland, in Spain, in Denmark, in Finland. And our Upper Austrian model is covered in Uganda. So in Uganda, they have 6 umbrella organizations for the whole country. And in Uganda, for example, they make water supply and sanitation. It's both. So not only water supply, not only sanitation. The model is that the villages make both together.
Thank you. I think it's actually a very good model that could be, replicated in many other parts of the region, not fully utilized. I would definitely advise for the people to explore it further on their own. We also have a possibility to ask additional questions during the Q&A session after the presentation. Our final presentation for this session is Nuno Broco, who is Executive Vice President of the Aquas de Portugal, which is kind of, separate organization. So we move from kind of locally, almost self-organized municipality to providing services, but even in the low density area, from the somehow centrally run organization, which is Aquas de Portugal or Portugal Water. So Nuno, thank you for finding time to being with us today. So floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I would like to start by sharing my screen. I think that now
it's coming slowly. Okay, here it is. Okay. You just wish to run it.
Okay. Okay, I think now that you are seeing my screen. Yes. First of all, thank you very much, World Bank, for this invitation to share with you our experience in this field of decentralized wastewater treatment plants. Let me tell you that I'll go very fast in some topics. The main issue is about discussion, so I would like to share a little bit of our history. So I'll go for ADP presentation, how we get here, and our approach that we have developed during the year 2000 for the rural systems, then the tools that we have developed, and the current challenge that we have in this topic. First of all, tell you that Portugal is in the west part of Europe. Of course, you know it, but we have this Mediterranean climate, and we are a very asymmetric country. We have all the majority of our cities in the coastal area and the inland part with the small agglomerations of populations. For us, water is central, and even seawater, even raw water that we share the most part of our river bases with Spain. So for us, for Portugal, the water is one of the central topics. Well, brief presentation about ADP. We are a public company. We are our shareholder is the Portuguese state. We have been founded in 1993, and we have made an investment during this last 27 years, about 7.5 million euros, 7.5 thousand million euros. and we serve around 80% of the national population. The remaining part is served by other operators that we have in Portugal, and we employ around 3,000 employees in this moment. We manage a huge number of assets, water and wastewater, and mainly on the bulk part of the system. So the retail part of the water system is on the responsibility of the municipalities for the most part of the areas where we are. Like I told you before, we are a small country, only 10 million inhabitants, but the biggest part of our population is focused on the coastal area, and the other part, the rural area, are in the countryside. So we have a big challenge in terms of management of our assets. We have big plants in the coastal area and very, very small plants in the inland part of the country. During these 25 years, we have achieved important results in terms of sanitation and also in terms of safe water. And just to tell you that, although we have in this graphic, in the top graphic, that only 80-something% of the population is served by wastewater service, this means central wastewater service. Some private solutions are not included in this graphic. So in this moment, Portugal has a coverage of service around 90-something%. Well, how did we get here? It's important to share with you our story from the last 25 years. 25 years ago, Portugal had a very, very poor service in terms of wastewater and water supply. The responsibility of this service was under the responsibility of the municipalities. We have a very important number of small municipalities, and they are small, and some lack of capacity is in their operations. So 25 years ago, only 15% of our wastewater was treated in proper wastewater systems. Only 50% of the water distributed was safe, and only 75% of the population was connected to water supply systems. So at that moment, this was the big picture for the water sector in Portugal, with a huge infrastructure gap, low performance, low quality of service, very inefficient, with a talent deficit that was one of the major reasons for that, and that was not sustainable. We had at that moment an exception, that was EPAL. It was the operator for the Lisbon area, for a set of municipalities around Lisbon. It was a very, very old company with more than 100 years. And that was the exception, and the Portuguese government took the decision in 1993 to use that example to create a new company that was Águas de Portugal, and it was needed an institutional reform to do that. So at that moment, with Águas de Portugal, it was created a new concept that was multi-municipal systems. This was partnerships between the central government and the municipalities, public partnerships that operates with a concession contract. This contract includes a capital investment plan. We operate under a full cost recovery model, and we have a very, very powerful regulator in this moment in Portugal that regulates all these operations. So this was the framework in 1993. In that moment, we have focused our main attention in the coastal area. So we have dedicated our investment plans to this first generation of multiple municipal systems, and we have created a set of new infrastructures, and we have increased a lot the quality of service in this coastal area. So the results that we have achieved at the end of 1999, it was very, very good results, and the Portuguese government took the decision at that moment to expand this concept to other regions of the country. So now we arrive to the main topic of this workshop. That was, for us, we call it the second generation of multi-municipal systems. But at that moment, some decisions were very important, because the model that we applied to the coastal area of the country was not possible to apply to the inland part of the country, because we had at that moment a very low population density at the inland part, low income from that population. The population was very old. Some desertification process was going on in the inland part of the country. We had a decreasing of the demography, and the topography of the inland part of the country was very different from the coastal area. So a different approach was needed to this second generation of multi-municipal systems. So at the moment, the main question was how to close the rural access gap to wastewater treatment and sanitation service. Like I told you, with a very difficult topography in the inland part of the country, we find out that we need to build around 500 wastewater treatment plants in this part of the country. The largest part of them were below 2,000 inhabitants. This 500 wastewater treatment plants only serves around 6% of national population and represents around 20% of our global investment. So this was a huge challenge at that moment. In this picture, you can see these numbers, and the total, like I told you before, the total number of wastewater that we have below 2,000 inhabitants is around 70% of our total number of wastewater. But we only serve around 6% of the national population with that, and this brings us to the investment per capita that is very, very high when compared with large wastewater treatment plants. So that was the issue at the moment, and we had some goals in terms of the investment plan. We had the goal to make a standardization of this wastewater treatment plants. We had this goal mainly because we want to minimize the project and tendering time. We know at that moment that the CapEx and OpEx optimization were crucial for the success of these operations. And of course, we had the full compliance of legal discharge limits. And one of the concerns was the operation of this huge number of systems. So our approach at that moment, in the beginning of 2000, was to define a global solution, a set of global solutions. We have pre-engineered a set of solutions for these small decentralized wastewater treatment plants. We have introduced that in a decision support system software, and this software gives us back all the price lists, drawings, project specifications, and tender documents. So this was indeed one way to speed up our investment plan at that moment, and in the second, with the second goal of having this kind of new assets with controlled operation and maintenance costs. So this is an example about our tool. It's a very, very simple tool, because the pre-engineering have already been done. We introduce the population, the required treatment, the available land, and the site characteristics. We have a decision tree in this software, and we have this standardization for a range of dimensions of these small wastewater treatment plants, from 250 inhabitants to 2,000 inhabitants, with different requirements of treatment, we reach to the final treatment line. So this is the input of the system. At the output of the system, we have, of course, what we aim in terms of tendering the documents. We have the decision about, or suggestion of decision about the best treatment line, a capex estimation, the project specification, pricing list, and so on. So we move forward to the tendering process with this output. So this is some examples about estimations of capex and some analysis that we can do with this software, and also the drawings that we get from this approach. So telling this, and just to resume, during this with this approach, during this decade from 2000, we have made this pre-engineer of all our solutions. We have built more than 500 wastewater treatment plants, and we comply with the public law. So we tender according to public law in Portugal. That is not always very, very fast. We have made this standardization of solutions, and we have made this optimization of CapEx and OpEx. That was for us also very, very important. Now, and to conclude, we are operating these systems for 15 years, some of them 20 years, and we have some modifications in the context that are bring us to a new stage of our engineering. So rural population keeps decreasing in these areas. Some of them we have built them for 500 inhabitants, and now we have 200. We have now, of course, new technologies available. We have already 20 years for the most part of these plants. We have some aged infrastructures, and we have a set of new challenges inside the ADP group: energy neutrality, circular economy, digitalization, and others. And we have this return of experience from 15 years of operation. So we are now doing a re-engineering of these systems. We are now looking for these systems, and we will take some decisions in the near future about the rehabilitation of these systems. Some of them we will improve the capacity, some of them we will transform them into pumping stations. So now we are in the second moment of the life of this small system. So that is it. And I'll let you with a picture from Portugal and from our nice coastal.
Thank you, Nuno, very much. I have to admit that there was a World Bank study to Portugal 2 or 3 years ago, and we went there, and we knew that Portugal has this Portugal Water state-run organization. And admittedly, coming from Eastern Europe, I was skeptical. I like, okay, state-operated agency, they ain't gonna work. And I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, the thing seems to work. The plants are constructed, operating, cost recovery seems to be there, etc. So, I mean, we have now seen in these 3 presentations 3 different options. You have case of Serbia, where responsibility is, as most in other countries, simply dumped to the local government, said, okay, your problem, you carry it on. You have Austria, where those local governments has organized cooperations on voluntary basis. You have Portugal Waters, who have basically, organized themselves as a state-operated holding for provision of certain services. I hope that my colleagues and friends from Croatian Waters are listening this, maybe an idea where the Croatian Waters could develop as well. But it's interesting, the 3 different approaches for dealing with the same problem. And that's the whole idea of this session, basically to hear experience of different management models, because this session is about management, not technology. Technology is going to be the next one. And so basically people can see what options exist and what is probably more appropriate. I remember during the study tour to Portugal, there was a colleague from Montenegro who said, well, every model you can work if you have the right people to implement it. That's also, there is some true in that. There's a lot of in people, not only in the model. There is no perfect model whatsoever. Before going to a Q&A session, I have a special privilege to invite a colleague of mine who I respect very, very, very much. Mr. Manuel Marinho is lead World Bank water and sanitation specialist, recently retired, who basically for a long time led World Bank engagement in the sector of water supply and sanitation from Montenegro to St. Petersburg in Russia. So if there is a person in the World Bank who has the most experience and who knows the most about how the World Bank engagement and how the sector has developed, what kind of evolution the sector went in the past period, that's certainly Manuel, the person with really great experience and great knowledge. I believe Manuel currently in exile in Portugal, if I'm right?
Yes, exactly. I'm living in Portugal, northern part of Portugal. And my service is being provided by one of the companies of Aguas de Portugal.
Okay, so Manuel, floor is yours. Just want to hear from you, as I said, basically, I don't know anybody who has your level of knowledge and experience from Danube region as well. What have you seen? How the things have developed? What is the optimal option from your point of view?
Let me start by congratulating the organizers of this session and the presenters. One always learns new things, and I definitely learned some few things today listening to you three. Let me give you some quick points of what I took from your presentation, ideas I have from the previous experience. One comment: the title of the session, "How to Close the Gap to Wastewater Treatment Sanitation Services," in a way implicitly talks about standard treatments, and I could see in the three presenters that the vision is much open, much wider. Individual systems, decentralized systems, small-scale systems, new technologies are there, and you are applying it. I would probably start by my conclusion. Both the Vienna Group and the Commission should use their position to lobby strongly the European Union to try to change and adapt their regulations. What Mr. Marjanovic said resounded all discussions we had. Why discharging into the soil is a bad thing if there is no evidence of pollution of the soil? If you do it right, do it. It's much cheaper in construction and definitely much, much cheaper in operation and maintenance. And I understand there is a tremendous pressure from the industry to go for standard systems, sewers, wastewater treatment plants, big or small. The experience from all these years should help influence the European Union and change that paradigm that was there, that if it is not sewer and take it to wastewater treatment plant, is not valid. I think that is something that almost everyone has already internalized, even though there is a lot of misinformation still around that should be, I would say, dismantled by good knowledge and good experience like the ones you just presented. One point that I think is important to keep in mind, what is rural versus what is urban? And it's not only the size of the town. If you have a 500 people town that is very, very dense in its structure, you probably need to go for a traditional system of sewers and taking the wastewater out and put it in the wastewater treatment plant. Not going into the details of what should be the technology of the wastewater treatment plant. In the end, it's a wastewater treatment plant. It could be a good septic tank, and I would call that a wastewater treatment plant, depending on the size. But you see, rural versus urban, what is the solution? It's something that has to be clearer. It's not just the size of the town. Just to give you one idea, I live in Washington. Half of the time I live in Portugal. In Washington, I have a septic tank in my house. And it works beautifully. And I empty it very rarely because we take the precaution of adding the yeast once, twice every midterm. So that gives you an idea that solutions are valid and that they work. and it's extremely cheaper than connecting to the wastewater system from Washington that would cost me almost $3 per cubic meter. In this case, I pay nothing or almost nothing. So that's a very important point to keep in mind always. What is the operation and maintenance? How does it work? One thing that Mr. Marjanovic didn't mention that I think is important to keep in mind too is what happens to the peri-urban areas. Peri-urban areas, there is a tendency to extend the network and put those waste back to the wastewater treatment plants that might be many miles away from where they originated. Decentralized systems are being used in low-income areas, in low-income countries, and they could be a solution for such situations. Instead of just pumping and channeling all those waste to a very distant wastewater treatment plant, a small decentralized system could work. And I would recommend looking into those options as well. And one final point, just to finish, going back to the beginning. You have a strong position. The Commission is extremely strong. I remember the time it was almost disappearing, and we push it back into reality. And there is a long experience already accumulated and discussed technically by the work you have been doing. Try to change the position of the EU, and at the same time, try to change the paradigm on what wastewater treatment should be, what wastewater management should be. I would always like to prefer to use the word management rather than treatment, because the impact that the experiences and practices in the EU is applying is having a horrible impact on what is happening in very developing countries. Everybody wants to be modern and be like the wealthy Europeans and have a pretty nice wastewater network and wastewater treatment plant, when quite often simpler, more pragmatic solutions and cheaper, and especially cheaper to maintain, could be applicable. So don't only think on what is happening inside Europe, but also think of what is the impact of the image that Europe is transferring to developing countries. Just one example, I was recently looking at a system in Kiribati, one of these tiny little islands in the Pacific, GDP $1,600. And they're thinking of just putting a big sewer because external consultants came and that's the only thing they know. And that's what the rich countries and wealthy countries do. Well, you see, there is an impact that goes beyond Europe, and that has to be taken into consideration as well. Well, just to finalize, congratulations again to the organizers and to the presenters, and hello to Mr. Marjanovic after so many years, seeing that you haven't retired. It's time to do it. Okay, goodbye to everybody.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you for finding time to join our workshop. It's always a pleasure to get your advice. I'm always impressed. This guy managed to say in the few sentences something that I'm not able to say in the whole hour. But before we go any further, we still have maybe 5 to 10 minutes briefly for Q&A. There are some questions posted here. Mr. Marjanovic, back to you. I mean, obviously, your push is toward decentralized, toward the lesser level of treatment, toward basically discharging into the ground. Wouldn't that have impact on quality of the groundwater? There is one question saying, okay, I mean, if the Serbia discharge in the ground, wouldn't that jeopardize the quality and safety of the drinking water in groundwater aquifer?
Thank you for that question. I responded in writing to that question, but let me reiterate now. Can you hear me? Okay. The groundwater quality in Serbia, we have no evidence of serious or significant impacts from septic tanks in most cases. We do have evidence of some impacts close to the settlements bigger than 20,000 people or so, purely of septic tanks. But for smaller communities, 5,000 people and less, we have no evidence of any impacts on groundwater quality from the results of monitoring. I must admit that monitoring could be better, and we are working on increasing the density of monitoring to confirm that. Just to clarify, I'm not urging for lesser degree of treatment. Individual systems with new technologies can deliver the same level of treatment as the directive requires, equivalent to secondary. And I just want to thank Mr. Manuel Marinho for saying what is in my mind also more eloquently than I managed to do. I absolutely support everything he has said. I think it's crucial that we avoid throwing money, especially in the lower Danube countries, into solutions which stretch our ability to improve the quality of life and redraws money from different sectors. I will share a screen for a minute, just one slide, that I want to show you what currently is happening in Serbia right now. This is central Serbia. The dots are settlements of any size. The red boundary surrounds the proposed new regional treatment plant. The distance between the north and the south is close to 100 kilometers. They are proposing a new regional wastewater treatment plant, and it has gone through Casper and being approved as feasible. I cannot believe that such solutions are still coming out of the consultant sector for such environments. The main reason for this is that the local authorities in Užice could not find a site for individual wastewater treatment plant for the city of Užice, and then people complained about the wastewater treatment plant next to their village, and the solution was, let's make a big regional treatment plant somewhere else. It's a waste of money, it's a waste of resources that are limited, and the benefits of that investment are going to be the same as building many smaller treatment facilities in rural communities and so on. We are taking resources away from much needed areas of investment elsewhere. The other issue to consider is again related to the demographics and so on, and to the politics of the situation. And I'm sorry to say that we often get sewers constructed just before the elections, local or otherwise. You come into a community, you promise to build them a sewer, and they vote for you. We have to come out of such a mental, how to say, framework. We have to really base our decisions on science and knowledge and what is best for the people and most economically efficient. There are too many other problems that we have to tackle.
Thank you.
In Serbia especially. Thank you.
Thank you, Pravoslav. Nuno, question for you. My colleague from World Bank is asking a question. You mentioned other wastewater systems basically serving more than one household. EIS approach that you are using that could be replicated in other countries. What could you tell us about it? I'm afraid your mic is.
Can you hear me now? Stefan, can you hear me? No.
Yeah, you're sounding like Darth Vader in the Star Wars, I have to say.
Can I try to respond maybe instead until he gets his line on? These are the so-called cluster systems where you treat more than one household. Cluster systems are feasible and welcome also, depending on the situation.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Nuno, can you try to speak now? Maybe it will work better.
Maybe now it's better.
No, not really. Something happens between your initial presentation and okay, we ain't gonna push it. If it's not, basically we'll try to provide written answers on question raised. Wolfgang, question for you. You already said the similar approach has been replicated in other parts of Austria. but still is not universally used. What is the reason why, for example, Tyrol, which is also very much, sparsely populated, separated communities, are not joined together in a similar way? Is it pure political, or what is the reason? Because I mean, your cooperative system seems to be quite appropriate for the country with scattered settlements like mountainous part of Austria.
In Austria, for cooperatives, you need the inhabitants which want to cooperate. In the Tyrol, in the wastewater, in the Tyrol for water supply, there are a lot of cooperatives, but in wastewater there are a lot of associations, because you have in the Tyrol you have narrow, long valleys where you have rivers, where you have a lot of tourism, and though the small, the narrow, long valleys are drained from the end of the valley up to the middle, where the river Inn is, where you have a big river, and the plants, the cleaning plants are here situated.
Okay, so it's a primarily topography of terrain which guides a form of organization, because you said in Burgenland, which is pretty much flat, they do have organized cooperative and they're bringing themselves together, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Okay. With that in mind, I will just briefly, for a moment, turn to my colleague Raimund. Any particular question that you would ask yourself before we close this session?
Thank you, Steve. Just as a Tyrolean, I can confirm what Wolfgang Eichslader said. It certainly depends a lot on the topography, and you have a lot of water also, and the settlement structure is a different one because it's very much located at the bottom of the valleys, basically, where you have a lot of water discharging also. So you have quite often, in the end of the bigger valleys, or in the end of the contributing valleys, also the wastewater treatment plants located there. No specific question from my side. I think we already reached the end also of this session. So I think we all deserve a little break before we go into session 4. Exactly. We'll have a 10 minutes or actually 13 minutes break. So one more time, thanks to our presenters for being with us, Nuno, Wolfgang, and Prvoslav. It was really a pleasure to hear these 3 different models. Each of them, seems to work to the higher extent or the lower extent in different countries. But that's the whole idea, to exchange experience and knowledge among the different models. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you on contributing with your work and time. We will be now having like 12 minutes break and reconvene at 3 p.m. Central European time to continue with the last session before the wrap up, that will be looking at technology and the technical solution used for rural wastewater management. So one more time, thank you, and see rest of you in 10 minutes. Have a nice day. 3 p.m. and it's start of our next session. I believe the people, and I hope the people are not too tired by now, because this is very exciting and interesting session, particularly for me as an engineer. Organization, financial justification, that's all fine. But, from the engineering standpoint, the real stuff is actually what technology and what is right technical approach to provide treatment in rural wastewater management conditions. Now, I don't want to say there are good technologies or bad technologies, but unlike more urban wastewater treatment facilities, rural one are usually operated by the people who have lower level of skills or have no skills, covering poorer municipalities. And as such, we always in the World Bank, when we are advising and discussing topic of rural wastewater management and treatment, or actually collection and treatment, we insist on something which is easy to operate and maintain, and basically as close to nature as possible. Having in mind that, yeah, they are absolutely beautiful high-tech solutions. There is only one problem. They are expensive to operate, expensive to manage, and essentially they require capacity that at the rural level often do not exist.
Therefore, basically, we on this session decided to look at the technical solution and development in rural wastewater management, particularly looking at example and experience again in Austria. But also will also take you for a short trip to the Baltic region, where we will Jari will present the experience of village water program that was looking at the experience of rural wastewater management in the Baltic region. So the 3 Baltic republics plus Poland plus Finland. And then we'll come back to neighboring Slovenia, and we'll look at the experience of the construction of constructed wetland technology. In the first place, frankly speaking, one of my favorite technology, because exactly fulfilled all the conditions. Is simple to operate, it has low costs, and it basically provides high level of treatment. Don't forget what Pravoslav said in previous session. Simple technology, simple solution, close to nature solution does not mean low level of quality, and I believe Tanya's presentation will prove you that this is actually the opposite. So with that in mind, I'm giving floor to Günther Langergraber, who will basically present us technology and technological approach that applied in Austria. Günther.
Sorry. Thank you, Stipe. I'm happy that I can again present you a little bit of what we have done in the recent years. It's about, we talked about, do these small systems work, do these small treatment plants work, and it's a kind of introduction to the other 2 talks. So a kind of overview, I showed this slide also at the introductory lecture, just reminding you where to start, and what Stipe also said, we are looking for technologies that are simple and easy to operate and show a high robustness. So which technologies basically we do have in the portfolio? So we have these intensive treatment systems that are more the technical systems. We have technologies that have a fixed biomass and with suspended biomass. I'm not going into detail here. I'm quite sure you all know about these different things. We mentioned also these extensive treatment systems like treatment wetlands. I prefer more the word treatment wetlands than constructed wetlands, because constructed wetlands can be constructed for other purposes than treating wastewater. So there's a, the preference is a little bit different, but it's the same as Stipe mentioned, treatment wetlands as one of these opportunities for extensive systems. What we heard before, this was, we also have other systems. We have the possibility of collecting the waste on site and transport it to off-site treatment. That's for sure one of the most expensive solutions. We talked about septic tanks in the previous systems, that only its primary treatment. And we talked about soil as a recipient of treated wastewater or partly treated or untreated wastewater. And there are also a lot of technologies that can save this. So, but I'm focusing on the systems for secondary treatment, and specifically on the treatment systems below 50 people connected. What we heard also yesterday from Heide Müller-Rechberger about the capacity of the treatment plants in Austria, about 22 million people design load in the plants larger than 50 people connected, but we have about 1%, about 260,000 people connected to these treatment plants below 50 people. So it is about this 27,000 smaller treatment system. I will also take you now to Upper Austria, just to come back where Wolfgang started. We had a study. Upper Austria is quite well organized in collecting the data also from the small systems. They have quite good organized data, and what they also do is, we mentioned this external monitoring that's required. It's in Upper Austria required once a year, and the reports have to be sent to the governments, to the authorities, and they manage that they put the results from this external monitoring in the database. So, but no one has looked at this data yet. So basically they have, from all the treatment systems they have the data there, how they are performing. Once a year they have a measurement point. So, and we got this measured data, we got this data set for a 10-year period. So you see here from 2009 to 18, for these treatment plants below 50 people. We looked at how the different technologies were performing based on this data from the external monitoring. And here you see the different technologies we compared with: conventional activated sludge, SBR. We have vertical flow wetlands, trickling filters, RBCs, MBRs, and soil filters. This is a specific technology also. Yes, when we look to the data, how many plants we have in Upper Austria of this size? We have about 2,400 plants below 50 people. You see the most liked technology is SBR plants, conventional activated sludge, and then treatment wetlands. We still have about, in the year 2016, we still have we had about 280 septic tanks. They are not anymore state of the art in Austria. These are mostly older systems. So you can also see when we look at the systems when they have been commissioned. You see that the brown bar here, that's the old septic tanks. That all has been before 1990, when since then the law is requiring biological treatment and nitrification. What's quite interesting, the involvement of the different technologies. At the beginning, you see trickling filters in the 1990s have been the first small plants implemented. Then the red bar, it's the conventional activated sludge. And then SBR technology was coming up, and in the last decade, it's mainly SBR plants and treatment wetlands that are implemented for these small systems. So the data set we got now for this study, it's 3 years later, so about 130 plants more. The number of septic tanks is decreasing because the authorities try to get them removed by systems, and you see here SBR plants and wetlands are the ones that have been built in the last 3 years. So as we look to the treatment performance, we have to distinguish also the single stage systems, let's say where we only have a SBR plant, but a lot of times we have a technical system and the treatment wetland as policing stage. This is specifically needed for SBR plants, small SBR plants, because they have this intermittent discharge of the treated wastewater, and we have these small receiving waters, so to mainly reduce the hydraulic load, the flush load to the small receiving waters. So you see about 1/3 of the SBR plants have vertical flow bed, and also about 10% of the conventional activated sludge plants. For these plants, it's mainly further reduction of the solids load in the effluent. So this is a typical example of such a plant with 50 persons. This shows you a SBR plant. You cannot see the SBR plant that's below this here, where the people are standing on top, and it has a polishing vertical flow bed because there's a very small receiving water. So this is also operated by a cooperative and treats the wastewater for 50 people. Just starting on the left-hand side, we have data of about 2,000 plants. And in total, over these 10 years, we have 2,000 plants, and you see here the distribution. The main technology is about 500 in SBR, conventional activated sludge and treatment wetlands. And in total, we have about 14,000 data on COD for these treatment plants. And when we look at the performance of the systems, you see in average, you have about 30 milligram per liter effluent concentration of COD, and all the systems that have where you have a wetland bed perform better than the others. So also a single stage treatment wetland, and also this with the additional polishing states, they show lower effluent concentration, but also the exceedance of the threshold is in number and percentage lower than the average for this system. A similar picture you can see for ammonium nitrogen. In Austria, all treatment plants have to nitrify. I think that has been mentioned also before. This is the most sensitive parameters where we see more often violation of the thresholds, but also here the treatment, the average or the median values of the effluent concentration, it's very low and lower again with these systems that has vertical flow beds included in the systems. What we tried then is to look if there is a decreasing performance over time for specific technologies. So we looked, I just showed a picture. For the green line, look at the wetlands. That means one point here is the median value of the ammonium concentrations for all plants that have been 5 years old at the time the measurement was made. So that means also older plants, treatment wetlands, there are less plants that are older, but in general, they have very low concentrations over the period, and they are very stable performance. And so, yeah. Also, the other technologies, all technologies actually performed well, but more stable performance have been shown by the systems where wetlands have been included. This is also then comparing, the final picture here is comparing, for example, conventional activated sludge plants and those that have a wetland stage afterwards. So they show a similar performance, again, all the systems with these vertical flow beds. The number of plants for each data point is different here. It's not showing the details, but in general gives you a good picture. One thing was, at the beginning, we were thinking, does it work with data from external monitoring? We had data in this data set where the effluent concentrations were way beyond the discharge limits. So, but, and also to say, maybe it's also because in Upper Austria, the system with this training, it's very well managed also by the authorities that people do these training courses. So there are most likely more trained people running these systems than maybe in other countries. So, but in so we couldn't see basically any decreasing of the performance despite of the technology. That was basically a surprise that all technologies also they have been worked for a longer time, worked quite well. So what would be possible other solutions that have not been mentioned yet up to now? I just want to come to maybe give you a little bit of more ideas at the end. We could think about, and that's now a trend in the last 15, maybe 20 years, we could look at wastewater as a resource. So these resources could be treated wastewater, nutrients, organic matter. There's a typo, I'm sorry for this. It could be also the heat in the wastewater that we can look at the resource. These solutions maybe most likely start with separate collection of the wastewater streams that we are producing. So separate collection of black water and gray water is not so much fancy, but gray water is less polluted and could be a good opportunity for start of reusing the treated gray water. And maybe you can use simpler technologies for treating gray water to get to the level that's required for the reuse. We could also look at source separated urine, and we can look into production of fertilizers. So why these systems would be also maybe of interest? Because this has been shown with experience from various countries where such systems have been implemented. It has been shown that treating wastewater is not an incentive enough often for the owners of treatment systems to use to operate the systems well. But if there is an additional benefit, for example, that you produce treated wastewater that's used for toilet flushing, used for irrigation, then the incentive for operating and managing your system well is higher. So just to sum up quickly, what we found is that despite of the technologies all could comply with the threshold values that they had to, just if you have treatment wetlands included, either as main treatment stage or as a policing stage, these systems have been performing slightly better. And we couldn't find changes in the treatment performance over time. And yeah, key again, I mentioned it also yesterday, a proper operation, monitoring and maintenance seems to be a key fact for well-functioning small systems, and these resources-oriented sanitation solutions can facilitate a well-functioning of the system as well. With this, I would stop and give the word back to Stipe. Thank you.
Thank you, Günther. You know, basically, very good presentation. One can tell that you are a university professor, how well your presentations are structured, how in order they are presented. So, congratulations. You know, this kind of summary immediately takes me to the second issue, basically financial sustainability of the wastewater treatment, which is not the topic for this session. The topic of this session is technology. We'll look at this more closely at this issue of the financial sustainability of the wastewater management in our next workshop, hopefully sometimes in spring. But in this moment, as I already announced, I would like to take you to the northern part of Europe. I'd like to introduce Jari Heiskanen, who will present Village Water Program, which is, if I'm right, was basically financed by European Union through Interreg financing, Interreg financing tool. So Jari, over to you. Maybe brief introduction from essentially just if you can give us your background, and then basically as much as you can tell us about Village Waters program in 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for giving an opportunity to tell about our Village Waters project. So my name is Jari Heiskanen, and I come from Sykli Environmental School of Finland, and I work there as a project manager and trainer. But what about our project? So the target of Village Waters project was to promote wastewater treatment in sparsely populated areas in Baltic Sea region. It was a 3 years long project, and it was completed almost 2 years ago. And yeah, the financing was Interreg Baltic Sea region program. We had 30 partners from 5 different countries of Baltic Sea area. There were universities, municipalities, research centers, and other environmental organizations. So what we did in our projects, we had 9 small-scale wastewater treatment plants, means that 1 or 2 in each partner country. We either renovated the old wastewater treatment plant or replaced totally new one. And we make water analysis before and after renovation from influent and effluent water. And another output was the information tool. It's a web-based tool in 7 languages, partner languages plus Swedish and English. And it is in a villagewaters.eu pages. And the idea of the tool is to find a suitable treatment solution for each case. So every target group can check and find the best solution. We collected data more than 500 small-scale wastewater treatment systems from suppliers of the systems. And then we produced articles, research articles, and guidelines and instructions for target groups and users. So just a few words about pilots. So in Estonia, we have two very similar pilots in Kolgaküla and Valkla villages, and they were sequencing pass reactors. And in both cases, there were two apartment houses which needed a new system for wastewater treatment. And the target was to decrease load of nutrients and organic load to the near ditch where it was loaded. And in that case, we renovated the pipelines, systems, and installed a totally new wastewater treatment plant, as you can see in the pictures. And here is the technical scene, just shortly, that there were 3 tanks: equalizing tank, process tank, and sludge thickening tank, and ferrous sulfate was dosed as a coagulant agent to the process tank. In both cases, the inflow was less than 10 cubic meters per day, and we used around 20 liters of ferrous sulfate. What about the cost? Total cost in Valkla was 35,000 and in Kolgaküla 43,000 euros. And results, in the testing time, we had a very big variety of inflow. As you can see, BOD from 200 to 900. So also the output variety was very large. But at the end of the test, in the normal run, we did meet the requirements like BOD 40 and suspended solids less than 35 milligram per liter. For small plants, there are no requirements for phosphorus or nitrogen, but if we compare to HELCOM, Helsinki Commission recommendation for Baltic Sea region, so we can see that phosphorus 2 and nitrogen 35. So we did meet those requirements. Means in normal flow and at least in summertime and springtime. In Lithuania, in Leitkirai, we had a bioreactor with air blowers and an excess sludge tank. So biological treatment has anaerobic anoxic aeration clarification chambers in one tank. Here are the pictures in the construction time when we visited there. And design flow, it was for 163 PE and average flow about 26 cubic meters per day. And here are the design treatment efficiency. So also in this case, at the end of the project, we met those treatment efficiencies, BOD 23, phosphorus 30, nitrogen 30, and phosphorus 4. The cost of the system was about 93,000 euros. In Finland, we had 2 pilots. One pilot was a private household with 4 people, and it concludes 4 septic tanks and filtering bed. In that case, we also renovated the old one and installed new sand filtration layer to remove phosphorus more efficiently. We also needed to add another pump, or actually this was done by the person who is living there. And here are results, so very good results with phosphorus 97%, nitrogen 78%, BOD 38, and this was the cost of this system was about 8,000 euros. And just shortly about the other pilots in Finland, Järvenpää Lake, there were about 10 houses in the near the lake, and we installed new pumping station and the pipes there, but it was actually connected to municipal wastewater treatment network because it was thought that it would be the better solution there. And the work was done by a water cooperative there. In Poland, we had also 2 pilots. In the mountain side, we have in Tulic soil filter and then irrigation ditch. And in Sokoly also soil filter and the irrigation pond, as you can see in the picture. This was done for 1 elementary school, actually. And in Latvia, 2 pilots similar than in Estonia. Yeah, that was the about pilots, and then another output we did. So it was the information tool where we collected data of wastewater treatment systems, and you can choose parameters where you are living there, how big is the capacity for many persons is living there in the system area, what kind of technology you would like to have, how much space do you have there, and how much does it cost. In this criteria, it gave 25 results. And there are lots of environmental data which collected, but also an efficiency like BOD and cost efficiency, euros per kilogram, taken kilogram BOD, this dimensions and investment price and so on. So they can be found from villagewaters.eu pages. And finally, what we learned about our projects. So not only the price of the system should be taken into account, but also maintenance cost and also the other costs when using the system, and also the efficiency of the system. And of course, does it meet the requirements? Different countries have different practices and circumstances. For example, in Poland, they have this nitrification pond and wetlands, lots of them, that kind of solutions. But for example, in Finland, they are not very common. Because one big reason is that because we have a very cold and long winter time, so they do not work very well in that time. And another reason is about if you are talking about nitrification pond, so that is a hygienic issue that they are not wanted or allowed in Finland. Yeah, and of course the equipment which we use in Finland, for example, this household, so they are very expensive for example in Poland. So they do not like those. About then we interviewed the people And they were actually satisfied with their new wastewater systems in pilot sites. One reason is that they had a positive impact to surrounding water status. They were normally effluent went normally to the ditch or small river, so you could see the results or the status of the water. And then, of course, if some cases reduced cost, lower maintenance because the old systems were needed lots of maintenance, and elimination of other nuisance, of course. And also notice that the equipment itself should be very simple, requiring as little maintenance as possible, because this is not top priority in everyone's life. So they do not want to or like to maintain them or purchase this kind of systems if there are not legal requirements. That was all from now.
Thank you, Jari. Two immediate follow-up quick questions. One is basically a cost of operation and maintenance. I mean, you show in your model that basically in your tool, okay, there are costs, but are those only capital cost of investment, also cost of maintenance?
In this tool, we have or should be at least somewhere that cost of maintenance is separate, and as here there is the investment cost, but actually this is sorry, I'm not very sure about that, but that is actually calculated for example, for 30 years.
Okay.
How much? Yeah, that include
Okay. And this tool is publicly available. I mean, I haven't checked on internet.
Yeah, that is available. Of course, the problem is like it's many projects that at the moment nobody maintain it. We used to maintain at the project time and a little bit after project, but because the equipment they change and they
Sure.
Yeah.
But at this moment, any of our participants that want to, test the model can do it at the Village Waters site, I guess.
Yes, and it is also in English.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you, Jari, for this presentation. We are running just according to schedule, and moving to our third and final presentation for this session. Ms. Anja Potokar is an engineer coming from a Slovenian company that works on nature-based solution. I ain't gonna mention the name of the company, not to say that we are doing company promotion. We are doing here technology knowledge sharing, not the company and the name promotion. But in any case, Anja, if you can share your experience and your recommendations with us.
Okay, good afternoon. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Just a moment. Okay, so what is the wastewater situation in Slovenia? As you can see on graph, in recent years, the amount of wastewater treated by secondary and tertiary treatment increased, but we still have a lot of work to do. Currently, our biggest wastewater challenge are agglomerations below 2000 PE and areas outside the agglomerations. So why is that? Well, in Slovenia, we have more than 44% of inhabitants that live in settlements with population of less than 1,000 people. That means that we have many small villages scattered throughout the rural area on small mountain hills, and this dispersed pattern settlements makes the decision-making even more complex, time-consuming, and solutions can be much more expensive. As we know, centralized systems, we heard that already today, require intensive treatment systems which are technologically complex and financially expensive. And many of these small communities cannot afford the construction and operations of centralized systems. And for these communities, of course, nature-based solutions seem to be appropriate. Well, so what is constructed wetland? Constructed wetland is a type of small wastewater treatment plant. We say it's a biological treatment plant with attached biomass. That means that wastewater is treated by microorganisms that are attached to the gravel and to the roots of plants. And its operation is based on the imitation of nature's self-cleaning capacity. While many people think that plants are the main element of treatment, so they do contribute to the treatment. They bring oxygen into the system, they maintain hydraulic conductivity, they can even uptake some of the pollutants, but mainly they provide surface area for the attached microbial growth. So we say that, yeah, microorganisms are the main element of the treatment. So most of the constructed wetlands built in Europe are subsurface flow wetlands. These are also most commonly built in Slovenia. We used to build horizontal flow wetlands, but now we are mostly building vertical or hybrid systems. And what are the typical treatment steps? First, we have a primary treatment. This is contains from coarse screens and sedimentation tank. And then pre-treated water goes into the constructed wetland beds, which are isolated with foil, filled with substrate and plantage. So basically each bed is designed with a specific role. We have to filter, to treat, or to polish wastewater. What are the advantages of constructed wetlands? As mentioned before, low cost of operation and maintenance, especially if we compare with costs of conventional technology. It is passive technology. That means that typically no or very little electricity and machine elements are needed for the operation. The construction is very simple and easy. It can be done by local companies. I will also show some pictures later in the presentation. And the system have a high buffer capacity. They can adapt to fluctuation in pollutant concentrations and hydraulic loadings. Thus, these solutions are also appropriate for vacation homes or touristic areas. So what are constructed wetlands disadvantages? Well, they need a relatively larger land area than conventional wastewater treatment. Here in Slovenia, we're using around 2 square meters per population of equivalent. But if we intensify systems, like if we aerate them, we can even lower the required area. The system can become clogged due to wrong selection of substrate or poor construction and maintenance. And it's also harder to control treatment process because once the system is built, it can be only adjusted to a small extent. So the first constructed wetland in Slovenia was built in 1991 and is still in operation. So in Slovenia, most of the wetlands are designed to achieve secondary treatment. So our effluent requirements are for COD, we have 130 milligrams per liter, and for BOD, we're having 30 milligrams per liter. So we gathered data and compared efficiency during winter months and the rest of the year. And as you can see, the efficiency is better from April to October, but the wetland meets effluent criteria all year around. Here's an example of constructed wetlands for single households, where land is not a problem. In Slovenia, we have more than 200 this kind of small-scale systems. It's not a lot, but municipalities are giving subventions and progress is being made. On this slide are presented constructed wetlands for small settlements from 100 PE to 500 PE. They're well incorporated into the landscape design. The shown systems enable secondary treatment. They remove BOD and COD. Here I wanted to show the holistic approach to wastewater management. It is the municipality of Ormož in northeast Slovenia. It is a good example how to combine these nature-based solutions and conventional treatment. As you can see on the map, they have implemented 7 constructed wetlands for dispersed settlements. The smallest is for 250 PE and the biggest for 1,200 PE. In addition, they also implemented constructed wetlands to treat landfill leachate. And with conventional systems, they covered a centralized system. One will be for 8,000 PE, and they also have 2 SBRs. Yeah. And then another good practice of collaboration between municipality and local community is in this specific case, the initiative came from local community Kamenica. Kamenica is a small village. It has around 10 to 15 houses. And they're not obliged by the legislation to build a sewage system and a treatment plant, but anyway, they decided they want it. So they contacted the municipality, and municipality supported their initiative. They donated to them some shafts and pipes, and the local community did the construction works and paid for project documentation. So yeah, they decided for constructed wetland, which is working fine. So this kind of the systems can also treat industrial wastewaters. Usually we have to combine technology with some advanced pre-treatment. Here you can see one for food processing industry. As already mentioned before, the systems have a big buffer capacity. So there are appropriate solutions for mountain cottages and camping sites. The highest one we have here in Slovenia lies on 1,600 meters of elevation and operates only 3 months per year. So this proves that the constructed wetlands, they don't have this long starting period. When the sewage comes, they start to operate immediately and efficiently. So constructed wetlands can be also modified to treat agriculture runoff. At the moment, we're involved in one research project. So we're building 6 systems and are now monitoring the efficiency. And the first results of the systems are very promising. As said before, constructed wetlands can also treat landfill leachate. And their proven technology, they can be used even as a pre-treatment step before the irrigation of the landfill cover, or as a final polishing step. On the picture here above, you can see the constructed wetland as a polishing step. It contributes around 10 to 20% to the treatment. And on the picture below, it is in Albania. The constructed wetland is implemented to treat old landfill leachate. It's a lagoon system. And here you can see the biggest constructed wetland in Western Balkan region. It was constructed in 2015 in Istria country in Croatia. And the specific of this location is high fluctuation of population. So they have a touristic season, and the population then in the summer months doubles and reaches up 1,900 PE. So this site enables wastewater reuse and also the sludge reuse. So after the final polishing step, water is collected in the reservoir with volume around 300 cubic meters, and farmers can actually come there and take the reclaimed water for irrigation of olive trees and vineyards. And next to the constructed wetland here, they have a sludge drying grid bed. So the municipality will now in 10 years decide if they will be able to reuse these biosolids produced on this system. So how does construction looks like? Here we can see construction of one small constructed wetland. First excavation works, follows installation of the sedimentation tank for primary treatment, and we ensure water tightness of bed with foil, and we put in some geotextile to prevent foil damage. In the next phase, we install gravel, piping, manholes also, and we plant the beds. So as you see, it's very simple. Yeah, so regular maintenance is very important for proper operation and efficiency of the system. The most important thing is to regularly dislodge the sedimentation tank. Then we recommend weekly visual inspections to check if the system is operating as it should. And we also we have to cut the reeds once per year in autumn, and plants don't need to be replanted. Of course, if we have some pumps, we have to maintain them and replace them as in any other system. So another nature-based solutions are reed beds for sludge treatment. I mentioned them before in Croatia. Well, sludge drying reed beds enable sludge dewatering, stabilization, mineralization, and they can be an alternative to mechanical treatment. For example, we all know belt presses, centrifuges, and they're usually installed to overcome some sludge disposal problems, like, for example, to avoid expensive transport to the central wastewater treatment plant, or if municipality want to reuse the sludge. So here the sludge reduction relies on natural processes. And what are the advantages of these kind of systems? The final product contains from 25 to 40% of dry matter. So classical mechanical dewatering usually reaches around 20 to 22% of dry matter. And additionally, due to mineralization of organic matter, the final volume is reduced for additional 40%. So lower volume means lower disposal cost. Again, we're talking about low-cost technology. The energy consumption is low. We're not adding any flocculants or coagulants, and that means lower operational and maintenance costs. So these sludge drying reed beds can be built both for small agglomerations below 2000 P or next to the centralized wastewater treatment plants. It's only a matter of economic and if we have enough space next to the centralized wastewater treatment plant. So here are the example of sludge treatment with the use of reed beds from the region. Here we can see constructed wetland, and next to it are sludge drying reed beds. So to conclude, I think I will just repeat what you already heard today, but nature-based solutions for wastewaters are robust and simple to operate. Investments can be repaid through energy savings. And yeah, we're talking about green solution. So we have some green space that also provides and supports ecosystem services, which I think now when we are fighting climate change is very important. So thank you.
Thank you, Anja. Maybe just a very brief clarification, because I can already see such a question being asked in the question section. What to do with, for example, wet tissues in the example of constructed wetlands. Actually, ahead of each constructed wetland, you need to have some kind of settling tanks. Or in case of Kaštel Labinci, we have some kind of rotating mechanical filter, and then we have a septic tank, and then we go to the constructed wetlands and the sludge. So it has to be some kind of mechanical pre-treatment, let me call it. But a quick question to you, because there was claims made that, for example, in, I don't know, Scandinavia, this is not appropriate technology because of the cold. But I mean, as far as I know Slovenia, and I know Slovenia reasonably well, it's not very warm place in the winter. And, you know, number of your treatment plants is actually in the Alps, and they still work. So what about the cold, freezing earth, freezing soil, and operating constructed wetlands?
Yeah, well, in Slovenia, the winters can be cold like up to -10, for example. And as I explained before, so the plants, they also provide, like they prevent freezing of the water. So the water cannot freeze in the constructed wetland. It is true that this microbial activity reduces, but they're actually designed in that way that they're efficient also in the winter.
Okay. So do you have any kind of limit? Okay, so I don't know, we cannot use it in Logarska Dolina above certain altitude or what? Is there any kind of limitations that you need to take into consideration when doing design regarding the freezing?
Yeah, but actually, as far as I know, like constructed wetlands are also built in Canada, which is a very cold place, and they also operate there and they work fine. And of course, I mean, if you know that there will be like a really cold temperature and freezing, then you do them like below the level of ground. And because the wastewater comes there, it's still warm. So yeah, they should work.
Yeah. Ginter, your experience from Austria is similar?
Yes, maybe what we could add and what I've posted also in the question and answer, that also a snow cover provides a very good insulation. And we had some detailed investigation on a system that was on 1200 meter above sea level, where we also measured the temperature in the filter. So, and if you have the plants as insulation cover and the snow, and during all the years we measured this, we never have freezing of this filter below of the sand filter.
Okay, thank you. Anya, back to you. I mean, I haven't seen cost comparison between the constructed wetland or and SBR or any other technology, both capital investment as well as operation and maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, if we are talking about costs, for example, the one constructed wetland I showed, which is in Croatia, right? They have monthly costs which are lower than 300 euros per month. And that also includes the telephone and like the whole sewage system that was built. Yeah, they are lower, but for example, if one really good SBRs uses, like for example, 100 kilowatt hours per PE per year, constructed wetland only uses like electricity to put the water on certain elevation, and then everything can go gravitationally. So it's not like the air pumps are working all the time, but it's just like for the pulses.
Yeah, for the record, by pure coincidence, I was the World Bank project manager on a Castello Labinci project 6-7 years ago. The original technical solution was supposed to be membrane reactor. And we came there and we were shocked by the proposal. They wanted membrane reactor in the middle of the nowhere with plenty of land available, and land cost very little. You know, and we completely turned around technology. Okay, we came with the grant. We completely turned, so we went from membrane technology to the constructed wetland. I mean, I don't think you can find much more two opposite solutions. So just to tell you how sometimes decision about technology applied could be completely arbitrarily made. Why membrane? Well, because there was somebody who told them this is excellent technology, you should have it. Okay, so in this case particularly, we've been there. It's probably visiting now again to see how the things are moving, but glad to see that everything works fine so far. Jari, you said in Finland, I would expect you have considerable number of isolated community. I know that you have a lot of woods and a lot of lakes, etc. I would expect a lot of wetlands as well, which are, you know, natural wetlands. So how come that this solution is still not very popular in Finland, or not very popular at all in Finland?
Yeah, I don't know. They have there have been lots of tests, but I suppose we are not used to them, and people are not interested in. We have this solution, septic tanks and filter beds, which is very common. So when salesman is selling, so everyone buy that kind of solution, or then package solutions. I think they are easier to install or something like that. I don't have any answer about these wetlands, why they are not, but yeah.
Seems to me more like what we are used to, and what is being marketed and, you know, commonly used in the region, than on basically proper analysis what is the optimal. Okay. Let's move further from the constructed wetland. It's only one of the interesting technologies that we have here. I was a little bit surprised by the considerably high number of sequencing batch reactors being used in Austria. I mean, my understanding from my university days some time ago was this, you know, requires certain operation skills. Okay, you can have automatics, sure, but still, I mean, whoever operates SBR needs to know what they are doing. I mean, isn't this a bit demanding for the people at the village level to operate?
Yeah, it's a good question why the number is so high. Basically because they become so cheap also via time. They are prefabricated units, and they are, in terms of investment costs, they are nowadays I would say maybe also cheaper than a treatment wetland, because with a treatment wetland you have to dig a hole, put some sand, you have some man hours that you have to put in. And for the small SBR plants, they come as a package unit, then they have to dig a small hole, it comes in, it's done in a few hours. And most people, when they decide on the technology that we know from the training courses that we give, they don't care about much. They just have to do it because they have to do it with the building permit. And when they go around asking for their neighbors, asking in their village, in the neighboring village, what is there, and they take the first thing they get, because they're building a house and they're not interested to invest a lot of time in the wastewater system. And when they do the course, they actually said, oh, it would be actually better if we would have done the course before, because then we would have chosen another technology, when we would have known all these pros and cons from the system.
Which kind of indicates certain level of lack of appropriate knowledge sharing mechanism, advice sharing mechanism on behalf of the Bundesländer or regional provincial government. I believe you also mentioned the issue of the water recycling using treated water. How common is this? I know that it's kind of sensitive issue because you can only use it for a very limited number of uses, but how much is this applied at all?
When we say in Austria, it's very seldomly applied because we are a very water-rich country still, but we have regions in Austria where we have water stress in summer, and the use of water in agriculture in Austria is very limited, but this is very strongly increasing in the last years. And we will have some issues regarding this in the future, I think. I'm quite sure. And I had one trainee in one of these courses. He was a plumber by himself. And he made, for his own house, he made a water recycling system. And he installed everything for toilet flushing. Then I said, why you do it? Do you have water problems? But he said, no, I don't have water problems, but I'm sure that in 15 years or 10 years, people will ask me how to do it because there will be need. And you don't have very little people that think a little further ahead, but you have more these kind of things happening in Austria.
Okay, I just have a comment said that basically New Zealand is a great example of water reuse. Good that you mentioned it. I actually have a very good friend of mine from Osijek who is a water engineer in Auckland, New Zealand. So we'll make sure that we also bring a New Zealand experience next time, but this time we'll limited ourselves to Europe. Okay, I mean, with this in mind, I would like to thank our presenter, Anja Ginter and Jari, and bring this session to the close a few minutes ahead of schedule. Raimund, maybe some last words, comments from your side before I close this session.
Thank you, Stipe, and thanks to all the presenters. I think we can have a short break before we move forward to the final session, a little bit to refresh ourselves, and I hope everybody sticks with us and see you in, I would suggest, in 10 minutes. So 4:10 we would continue and go into the final wrap-up and the final session.
Raimund, before we basically take a break, maybe just one word of comment. Originally, when we were, Adam, Raimund, myself, few other people were thinking about this workshop a year ago, believe it or not, a year ago. It took some time. Okay, the idea was that we're going to do this in Vienna, physically in place, and we'll go and visit few rural wastewater treatment plants in Austria or Slovenia. That was the idea. And then the COVID came. Okay, our old plans go to, not to mention where. So in this moment, our position is, okay, this is a workshop. Of course, we'll wrap up today. But then we are still hopeful that COVID allows us. In the summertime, we might be able to have second field part of this workshop where we will visit a number of the small rural wastewater treatment plants, most likely in area of, not far from Vienna or the surrounding neighboring countries. So just keep in mind that we are not done today. This is, we are finishing with theoretical part. Hopefully, inshallah, we'll still have opportunity to have a practical visit to sites this summer. So guys, keep tuned with that in mind. I believe we have 5 minutes break, Raimund?
I would suggest to come back at 4:10 so that people can
Okay,
grab a
so
coffee
10
as
minutes
well.
break for last coffee, for final words, wrap up, and then basically that will be the end of our workshop. So thank you, everybody. Thanks to our presenters, and see you everyone in 10 minutes. Thank you.
So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had the opportunity to have a short break. Welcome back to everyone to the final wrap-up session, wrap-up and closing session. This will be a very brief session, and I have to apologize already in advance that on the short notice it will not be possible to summarize and wrap up everything, all the rich exchange which happened during all the sessions before. So apologies for that in advance, but there will be an attempt made to figure out some of the key conclusions and main takeaway messages where Günther was working on. So Günther, also for you, apologies in advance on this short notice to try to wrap up everything. But the idea would be that as a next step that Günther, with a presentation, provide some of the key messages. And then we would turn again to the audience afterwards for some quick reactions. We would then again also like to have a quick poll feedback from your side, also from the audience, before we turn into the final session or into the final wordings and closing words then. Günther, until you get set up, just one quick reaction from my side. I mean, what reminded me during the whole exchange, I was reminded a lot about the developments in the rural areas I come from, because the place I come from, water supply is managed by 6 households actually. So it's really a small cooperative managing water supply. And the water quality, everything was fine all the time. So this worked really very well. And when then also steps were taken for wastewater treatment, I also remember how much the quality of the small creeks next by the houses was also improving significantly, and how also the people living there in the area, how much they appreciated also the improvement of water quality there. So these were very nice examples for decentralized solutions, where we had a very nice discussion also on the session 3. So that's just a nice reminder of the developments which took place in the place I'm coming from. But without further delay, Günther, I would like to turn to you, trying to make a brief wrap up of the main conclusions from your side. So I will close my presentation and the floor is yours.
You have to stop. Yeah, no, it works. Thanks, Raimund, for the introduction. Apologies, for one more time, you have to listen to me. I try to be very brief with wrapping up, somehow summarizing what we have heard, and then make some preliminary conclusions. That's just a few slides. I will quickly go through the different sessions that we have had over these 2 days, and just to remind you what we have been hearing about. We started yesterday with more setting the scene. We talked about the global perspective, that water is a human right, sustainable development goal number 6, that gives the general policy driving forces. Then we heard agglomerations are there very general and sometimes not so clearly described what to do. Just a reminder, we also heard that this directive is currently under revision and the stakeholder participation process is ongoing at the moment. So you can put also your efforts, you can put your comments in these processes. We heard also about the social dimension of rural wastewater treatment, the affordability, and from also experiences from other countries. On the national level, we heard some examples from various countries, and there have been some general challenges mentioned for the rural areas. One is that we have only a small part of the wastewater that comes from the rural areas, but for the small part, we need quite a lot of, a high number of treatment plants. Some areas have decreasing population in the rural areas, and rural areas are often less are often poorer than the urban areas in most countries. The national implementation, we heard that the regulation in a lot of countries is in place, what should be done, but there's a lack of funds. So there is a strong need for financial support from the European Union. But we also heard that there are regional differences in the Danube Basin that requires, I called it here national action plans, but national differences in the way how these funds are then spent and what to do with these funds and how to do it, because we heard quite clearly yesterday that there are a lot of different challenges in detail. Today, the first session, we heard about practices from the municipal level. Financing models for rural wastewater managers are required, subsidies are required. Very important thing is that we need the capacity for operating the wastewater treatment plants, or there's a typo, I'm sorry for this. There might be different models for this operation and maintenance. And we heard about these umbrella organizations. This is quite an interesting model, I think, for a lot of different other regions, where smaller cooperatives and also other organizations could get support from a regional umbrella organization. The importance of the capacity, the training of operators was mentioned also quite a lot of time. On the last part, we heard about different technical solutions. I just put here, we heard about IRS, we heard about small wastewater treatment plants, we heard about DEWATS. It's basically small systems to treat wastewater. So we have this conglomeration of different acronyms or different names for somehow the same thing. We all know that for the rural areas, we must have technologies that are simple and robust, that are easy to operate and maintain. Design standards help to facilitate the implementation of the small systems. We heard not only today, but also on the other days. And just a reminder that the technology can be very simple, but if it's not operated and maintained, it is not working. So we need this capacity for the operation and maintenance, and this is, for me, a very crucial point. So just very few conclusions from from my side, what we have heard so far. I think one thing is that the importance of rural wastewater management is widely neglected. Also, there are areas that has also been shown in studies where they have a quite significant influence on the surface water quality of these areas. To get something going on in rural wastewater management, we need the policy framework for enabling and support. And as it was also mentioned in the EU legislation, we need some more clarity for these smaller agglomerations, what to do regarding the definition, what is really agglomerations, when these IRS are allowed to be used, or when they should be used and when not. And which levels of treatment they should achieve. I think this is something, these 3 points, if this is more clarified, it would already help a lot of the countries for the implementation. Yes, I think that's quite clear. Local communities should be able to operate the systems at the end. And again, we need simple and robust technologies and easy to operate technologies. This is repeating, but I think it's very more important. We have seen that these nature-based solutions such as treatment wetlands are suitable solutions for this, or can be suitable solutions when a specific level of treatment has to be obtained. We also heard that there might be other locations, other specific situations where this high level of treatment is not required. There might be options with where treated wastewater can also be infiltrated in soil and soil can be used as treatment, but this is a case-by-case situation, so groundwater should not be endangered to be polluted for this. On a side note to these conclusions, because I worked quite a lot in treatment wetlands, and in some of these studies on wastewater, what shall be done in the regions or in other studies, it's sometimes mentioned that treatment wetlands are a second choice technology if another technical solutions can be not built. And this somehow is some a prejudice that treatment wetlands do not function as good as other solutions, but we heard from the last presentation that this is not the case also. And also the experience shows that with treatment wetlands, you can have at least and most sometimes also better treatment performance than with other solutions. Yeah, last slide. There's a lot on this. We need financial support, or financial support is needed for rural communities for the implementation of sanitation and wastewater management in terms of subsidies to make it affordable and socially accepted also for the people. One challenge is that O&M is never subsidized. It's always only the implementation cost. So we need to look into O&M specifically, because only building a wastewater treatment system does not work, because if it's not operated and maintained, it will be failing at the end. Again, this another type where it should be corporations with umbrella organizations, not as associations. Sorry for this. This is one example that might be quite possible. Might be a good model to be replicated also in other countries. And something like this, when we look into operation and maintenance, it's always training programs have to be sought besides of this or together with this for the operators, for the owners. And of course, last but not least, we have to take into account all the different regional settings, the differences in the different regions, the difference between upstream and downstream countries in the Danube Basin, but also within a country, there are quite a lot of differences between the different, also rural areas within different countries, within the same country. With this, I'm at the end of this very quick wrap up what we have heard today, the last 2 days, and back to Raimund then.
Thank you very much, Günther. Excellent job in trying to draw some conclusions, main takeaway messages. Also to the audience, please note that there was a lot of exchange also in the Q&A section, so you might want to consult this, and also to inform you that the main takeaways and also the exchange which took place in the Q&A section will also feed into the workshop report. So we have currently the background document, but as a next step, we will take all this information, also the exchange which took place in the Q&A section, and feed this also into, I would call it an updated background document, which will then serve as a workshop report, so that all this information also from the presentations will be captured in one report that you can also consult, and all this information will be made available. As mentioned in the beginning, you're very much welcome to provide reactions in the chat box to the brief presentation provided by Günther. So please make use of this opportunity to provide some feedback also on these main takeaways which were provided by Günther. While you are doing this, maybe I can turn quickly to Stipe and Adam also, to Adam Kovac and Stepan Gabric, on a quick reaction from their side. What the main takeaways from you were also from these intensive discussions the last 2 days, and what the main lesson learned in the last 2 days was for you. So was there anything new which you learned, or what do you think is the main message which you can take away if you talk about this workshop and you explain somebody about this event which was organized? Maybe Stipe, starting with you first and then turning to Adam.
Thank you, Raimund. I mean, if there is a single thought that, you know, single immediate impression following this workshop, this is that I was slightly taken by surprise by the level of interest, participation, and involvement, and the number of the people included. I mean, when we started, we thought this is okay, interesting topic that nobody is really covering much, but not sure really how much this would be interesting for professionals in the field. Turn out that there is significant interest. So if there is a single lesson learned that I will take from those 2 afternoons, this is, okay, this is definitely the topic that's worth investing further efforts in, not only developing technical solution, they are professionals, technical solution, but developing the right operational models that will be applicable to the particular needs of particular country on one side. And second side, what the World Bank can as well do is at least open discussion with European Commission about appropriateness of the measures as it comes to the individual solution and the small scale treatment. I mean, that's our advantage. We are not dependent on any national government. We can act based on our professional opinion and expertise. So those would be 2 main takeaways from me. Yeah, there is a lot of interest. There's a lot of people, and this is a good topic, worth investing effort and World Bank resources. And second, we should at least, make an effort ourselves to initiate discussion, or at least to be catalyst in the process of discussion with European Commission on this particular topic. That's all from me.
Thank you very much, Stipe. Very good points. Can fully agree that the level of participation was to some extent a surprise because it's a very specific topic. So this was certainly one of the very positive takeaways, which I also take forward from this exchange. Fully agree. And also that it's very timely with the ongoing discussions also at EU level on the wastewater treatment directive revision, these discussions which are ongoing. Adam, maybe turning to you, maybe you want also to provide some feedback while attendees can still post any comments and questions in the chat function. So Adam, what's the main takeaway from your side?
Yeah, just very briefly, first, I just can echo what you said. For me, also surprising the great interest of the people. You remember when we were in Bucharest together 3 or 4 years ago, we had a very general discussion on the overall issue. And we agreed that we may need to organize very specific discussions. But I never thought that this very specific issue on the rural wastewater management would attract so many people and so much interest. And this is what was very interesting, that even though it's neglected, that we always think of the large investment projects and infrastructure development. This topic is still somehow in the background. It's neglected, as we said many times, but we see now the importance. So this is one thing that maybe we should even make a follow-up activity on this issue. Maybe not. This workshop is a good intro event, but maybe we could somehow continue. We could think what next steps we may offer to the Danube countries in the region in cooperation with you guys and the World Bank, the Danube Water Program, and others. The other issue is that I also somewhat agree, but Pravoslav mentioned that the technology is there, and I was happy to hear and to learn how much different technologies are in place, from the small reactors to the wetlands. So I think the technological palette is quite rich. But remember what Stipe said, that the awareness is quite low, so the people don't know about those options. And I think the knowledge sharing and how to reach the people and how to tell them that these options could be an alternative. This might be an important topic that we may advertise. We may go on in this direction to promote more these options to the public, to make them aware of these options. Because what we learned, we heard from policymakers that even for the planning phase, they are in favor of the sewer systems, and they not really think of the more nature-based solutions. And the last thing that also agree that there is a good opportunity now because of the revision of the directive, that we can raise our voice, how we think in the region, what could be beneficial for the revision. Of course, we don't know how much they will take from our recommendation, but I think what we could do is to develop a sound recommendation paper or just a list of recommendations we think it may be useful, and we can then hand it over to the commission. The guys, this is what we think, and it might trigger a discussion. So that Steve said is this catalyst role. Yeah, I think that it could be the important role we may do together, just to develop something, a background paper, recommendation paper, summarizing how we see the situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Also very good points. And I mean, the main purpose for this event was really to raise also awareness about the topic and to foster a knowledge exchange and experience exchange between experts in the different countries, between policymakers, utility experts, experts from international institutions. We really hope that this specific purpose, this specific objective was really achieved also with the discussions the last 2 days. Quickly checking the chat also, we see that there's some comments there. One comment addressing the point that the right balance between centralized and decentralized approaches needs to be found, what I think fully agree, me personally. And also that there would be like interest to further share also experience. So that's very nice feedback. One question maybe to you, Günther. We didn't discuss so much research needs in the last 2 days. There's also one comment in the Q&A that further research needs are out there. Do you have any reaction on this particular point? Where do you see specific further research needs on the issue of wastewater service delivery in rural areas? Are there any particular points which are not sufficiently covered by research? From you as a university professor, I'm sure you would have some ideas in your mind, so maybe you can a little bit share your ideas also where further research might be needed.
I speak maybe a little bit against universities now if I say now for the implementation, if we really want to make it happen, we have all the technologies there. It's not so much on the technology side, it's more on the management side and how we can find clever management operation models and suited to the specific regional settings and maybe also about a common approach how we can evaluate the treatment level that's required. We have some guidance in the water framework directives, but it would be handy for communities, for local authorities, if they would have a guidance how to really do it when they have the problem to decide what to do. And this would be more the focus of more practical research and what's really needed to get the rural wastewater management implemented.
Thank you very much, Günther. So again, the point how to get the feet on the ground and how to really support implementation and service delivery. So that's really the point in order to get things done, basically. And here, specific guidance and further exchange can be helpful. You having said this, as also mentioned by Stipe before, it's not planned that this would be the last event on wastewater treatment. It's planned to have follow-up events, and particularly one on financing wastewater treatment, which was identified together with the ICPDR also as an important topic. Seeing also the comment, the EU-Danube strategy priority area 4 also offered to contribute also to this further exchange. So we will then certainly reach out to different organizations, institutions again in the preparation of this upcoming events then also in the future. So thanks a lot for all these offers. That's very kindly noticed and appreciated. And talking about follow-up activities, maybe we launch a quick POLEF because we prepared a couple of questions where we would like to get some feedback also from the audience, from your side, on particular topics you think where follow-up exchange would be helpful. So I will open now my presentation again and start to share the screen. So please get ready to use POLEF again. I will just open it. 1 second. So you're kindly invited to participate via POLEF. Here again on this slide, the link to the POLEF questions. And I'm also asking Katja to maybe post the link to the chat function so that people can enter the website. Also, what is possible is that you simply scan the QR code, which you will find on this screen. So you can also access the poll via your mobile phone. So I leave this slide a little bit here before that you can actually enter also Polef before we go into the first question. If you do not use the QR code now, you will find the link then also in the chat function. So I hope everybody was able to enter Polef. And we would like to raise the first question to you. I read it out loud. Please rank the following potential areas for further support and follow-up actions. And how this works is that you can rank these different follow-up options by moving answers up and down according to the priority. So highest priority would be on the top and the lowest priority at the bottom. And we see that people are already entering their feedback. So a couple of possible follow-up activities would be to put more focus on technical guidelines for small-scale solutions, especially for nature-based solutions and IAS. Capacity building for rural wastewater, service delivery and rural wastewater treatment in general. Financing for rural wastewater treatment is another option, and capacity building for rural wastewater treatment in general that mentioned. Guidance for operation and maintenance schemes for rural areas also. This is a point we discussed before already, that and there was also a comment that financing might even not the biggest challenge, but the question how to organize the sector in rural areas for service delivery in rural areas also. So we see that things are still moving. One option is also to click other. And just to make you aware, we will have another question where you can type in then open feedback on follow-up activities or where you think further work would be needed. I see now that the feedback is a little bit stabilizing. So what is leading is financing for rural wastewater treatment. This actually would fit quite well into the planned exchange on financing of wastewater, which is planned in any case for spring, later in spring. So under this exchange also rural wastewater financing could be picked up. Ranked second, technical guidelines for small scale solutions. Third ranked, guidance for operation and maintenance schemes. Fourth place, capacity building more generally. And some people have also some other ideas in mind. So I think the feedback is quite stable. I think we can leave it with that. So this feedback will be taken into account and also reflected in the workshop report, which will be prepared and then shared with you also afterwards. So thanks a lot for this feedback. Moving on to the next question, and as I mentioned already, this is an open question. What other topics should be considered for potential further up support and follow-up activities? More generally, so if you have any ideas, you're kindly invited to post your answers into Polef if you have any ideas. I've seen that some people ranked other follow-up activities also. So if you have specific ideas, and they're coming up already, sludge, cooperation, communication as a potential follow-up activity. So please use this tool. Please add your thoughts. Sludge, second time already. Maybe the same person. Is it possible to post it the same answer twice maybe? Nutrient recovery. So we see that ideas are coming in. Institutional environments to enable rural O&M. Management, which was also one point previously. Integrated water issues and local level wastewater is only one part. Management models for the lower Danube particularly. Ester reuse. Best practice examples, monitoring. So quite a range of topics. Support for cooperation. I just let you type in some further answers. Maybe quickly, can I turn to Günther maybe? Do you have any reactions on these ideas which are coming up? Do you have any quick reactions on the additional ideas which are raised? So if you have any immediate reaction on these additional ideas, welcome if you can share your thoughts.
Oh, of course, sludge handling, it's an issue, it seems like, and this we haven't touched so well, but it's clear that you also have to deal with the sludge. I think that's not so much surprising what's coming here. It's just, it was also mentioned again, this organization of the water management and management models that may be very important. And then I somehow lost. Yeah, I think that the personal preferences are quite different from the people. That's a long. And I think what was quite clear also, there were several related to better communication, knowledge exchange between different stakeholder groups, between the different, maybe also between the different participants in here about different possible solutions.
Right. Thanks a lot, Günther, for this brief reactions. I mean, knowledge exchange and making aware about different approaches and technologies was also the purpose of this exchange. So I hope to some extent we achieved this objective already, but it will also be about communicating also the results of this workshop and to make all information also available from our side, but also from all the participants, that is presentations, and then also the report can be further shared and also.
Raimund, I'm just wondering how many extra workshops we need to organize based on this list.
Yeah, this might a little bit extend our capacities, fully agree. So there will be a need for priorities, but I think it's always useful to get some feedback where the audience thinks what is really relevant in their practical challenges, the practical challenges they are facing, and for discussing also priorities for potential future topics, because the topic will remain relevant. I think this is also one main takeaway from my side. It will not be done with one workshop, but this is an issue which will take many, many years to be addressed. And therefore, I think generally this general feedback is very helpful in the frame of this exchange.
And it's also you know, setting a good additional ground for topics to be handled through potential next phase of the New Water Program as well.
Fully agree, and of course also in the frame of the ICPDR. So I think the experience is certainly that this cooperation was extremely fruitful, and then we can try to prioritize where further activities might be helpful. Fully agree.
Now imagine if we are still able to do field trips.
Fingers crossed, Stipe. Fully agree.
Yeah.
So with this, let's turn on to the last question, which will be a very open one, generally on the workshop. And this is a little bit challenging. So the question is, in one word, what are your main takeaways from the event? And this will be illustrated in form of a word cloud. And those answers which come up more often will be displayed larger in writing here. So we see that feedback is already coming in. Challenge is leading currently, and it's getting bigger and bigger. So we see also reuse is there, future management, connecting, wetland is also there, management aspects. But challenge remains to be in the lead. But there's also quite some interest in wetlands, so decentralized solutions, green solutions also for wastewater treatment in rural areas, more generally probably. Financing is also coming in, opportunities, practices. So please continue to provide also your answers. This will also feed into the workshop report then afterwards, because it's always very interesting and useful also for the organizers to get some feedback on the main takeaways from the exchange. So wetland is really leading, so it's quite interesting. There was a lot of interest in the technical solutions, obviously, but also policies there, sustainability, hope, probably related to the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive revision, maybe. But also people, framework, etc. So that's very nice. Thanks a lot. Maybe I think because we also running out of time. We are in the end already of the wrap-up session. Maybe briefly turning to you, Adam, maybe some final words before I would then also close the event. So from the side of the ICPDR, maybe you can provide some brief closing words from the co-organizer ICPDR.
Thank you, Raimund. I consider this event a very successful one, not because of the very fruitful discussions and the large number of participants. I think we really try to provide inputs from several aspects to the problem. So from the policy making, municipal level, technological level, I think we try to make a turn, I mean, to go around the topic. And I think that we succeeded. And I think this, what you also said, this probably was only the first step, because as now I see on the messages and the requirements or the wish list of the participants, I think the interest is still great. So I think that we just now started, we could continue. Of course, we have to discuss the framework, how much the Danube Water Program is able to support this activity, and also with the involvement of the USDR on the Global Water Partnership with other actors. But I think I very much liked the workshop. I liked that we got a lot of feedback. So it wasn't just presenters and the moderators who were talking. We really got a lot of comments and interaction with the participants. I would like to thank all the presenters for the great and high quality presentation they provided. Also the good discussion we had, also the high number of participants and the engagement of the people to this topic. I want to also thank the co-moderators, the great colleagues from the World Bank, and also, I mean, Raimund and Stipe, but also Katja in the background, who was organizing the whole technical setup and was responsible for the smooth running of this event. I think she did a great job. So I think then we all have to acknowledge her job and efforts. And all in all, I also learned quite a lot, and I think still a lot of work is ahead of us, because not only the report, we have to somehow summarize everything and integrate a nice report, probably also with the help of Günther. But follow-up activities, I think we still need to think what to do with this, and how to further support the Danube countries and the countries in the region, so that the rural wastewater development become sustainable and more prominent, and not overshadowed by the big agglomerations and the big projects. And finally, also a big thanks to Günther, who had several roles in this event, supporting us with the background document or the summary, also a presentation. So he had a key role in the workshop. So thanks for your support also to this event. Yeah, this was on my side. Thanks again, guys. I enjoyed it. It was fun, but also on a very sound professional ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. So you took away all the final words already. I will still repeat some of them. I mean, for me, the time also passed extremely quickly. This was an extremely interesting and intensive 2 days. Me personally learned a lot. And I mean, for me, the main takeaway is really that the topic is a topic which obviously is of significant interest. This is confirmed by the number of participants and also by the active participation in the exchange. And another takeaway is that rural service delivery is not only an issue for environmental protection, it's also a social issue. It's also related to the Sustainable Development Goals achievement, but particular approaches might be needed to address this particular topic. This was also one of the feedback which we received on the first day already, so yesterday, and this was also confirmed by the exchange yesterday and today. I will not add anything in addition substance-wise in the end now. More just brief information also on the logistics. A lot of people got in contact with us how to obtain the presentations and how to get all the material. So all the presentations and also the recordings from both days will be made available online on the websites of Voice of the Danube, which is run by IWD in the frame of the Danube Water Program also, and also on the ICPDR website. So you will receive a specific email where you can find the information, all the presentations, and also the recordings from the sessions from the last 2 days. Then, as I mentioned already, all the exchange and discussions will also feed into the preparation of the workshop report. It will take some time to integrate all these rich discussions and the feedback also from the Q&A. And you will receive a specific workshop report then in an email where you will see the link where you can then also download the reports that we have basically a document together where all this exchange is also summarized then. A big thank you also from my side, first of all, to the Austrian Ministry of Finance, who is the donor for the Danube Water Program. As mentioned also in the beginning, without this financial support, this exchange would not have been possible. So thanks a lot again for this generous support during all the previous years also of the Danube Water Program. Second, to all the speakers and moderators, I think it was extremely well prepared, extremely rich in terms of contents. And this really allowed for very interesting input and also for an exchange and discussions on solid ground. So thanks a lot for this also. Third, a big thank you to all the participants also for the active participation in the Q&A, in the chat. And we really hope that you enjoyed the exchange and learned a lot. And there was a lot of takeaway also from these last 2 days for you professionally, the challenges you are facing back at home, and that you really benefited because the whole event was organized for the benefit of you, because you are the main audience basically, and the objective was to generate the knowledge exchange and capacity building in the region with this activity which was organized. And fourth, special thanks also to the whole team which was behind preparing this event, in particular also to colleagues from the ICPDR and IWD for the all the work which was going into the preparation of this event, and also for the smooth running during the last 2 days without facing any major technical problems, and really also for the co-moderation and all the joint efforts which were put into the preparation of this event. It was a lot of joy, definitely from my side, also from other colleagues. So hope we can continue also in this pattern for future activities also. Finally, just to flag again that this will not be the end of the story. It's planned to organize some follow-up exchange and events on the topic of wastewater, but also more generally on water in the frame of the Danube Water Program. So please look out for information for these events, which will be provided in due time. So we have a couple of ideas in the pipeline, which will be pursued also for the next months for additional exchange. And also, finally, just thank you again to everybody. And with this, I would like to close the event. To everybody under these circumstances, please stay safe, stay sane, and stay negative, as people often say. So that's really a good wish to everyone, that you stay healthy. And hopefully that there will be an end of these particular circumstances around the corner very soon. We really all hope for that. And with these final words, I would like to close the event on behalf of the organizers and the bank also, and wish everybody a very nice evening, and looking forward to be in touch also for future exchange and future occasions and opportunities to work together and to share our experience and to have a knowledge exchange like we had in the last 2 days. So thank you very much. Have a nice evening, and we look forward to be further in touch with you also in the future. Goodbye.